Hi, I am Jesus Arredondo with Group 6, and I am going to be walking you through the telemetry case of study for this week. So this case of study is about a company that used to give consulting services to a big bank in the US. They had a project that had 140 employees in the account. They provided testing services to this customer, and they had dedicated servers, network, and infrastructure to comply with security and compliance requirements for this customer. They had strong physical security measures needed to be in place. For example, they had a CCTV system that was recording 24/7, and this area was segregated from other areas, and the infrastructure was segregated from other projects. So everything that happened inside had to be recorded. And they had a DVR recording system, and that allowed them to have 90 days of recordings as part of to be in compliance with the security requirements. They had constant security audits that were performed internally and externally, and those external audits were performed by the customer. They had a requirement for high resiliency on their infrastructure to ensure the continuity of the business. So one of the requirements was that the logs needed to be collected, to be analyzed, and to ensure the security of data. So they had 10 virtual servers, including Active Directory server, syslog server, SCON servers, and they had also the antivirus server. They had 150 workstations that had Windows installed on them, and they had 10 network devices such as core switches, routers, an IDS and IPS to ensure the security of the network. And they had the CCTV and DVR systems to ensure the recording of everything that happened inside the secure area. So they had some challenges in this project, including they had slow network connections that affected users and customers, since there were some applications that did not work correctly because of these problems. And sometimes the problems would be discovered first by end users first and the customer. They had internally in the IT department, they had other problems, such as collecting data and storing logs to the syslog server. They had a damage on the DVR hard disks, and eventually they had a problem with the recordings since the system stopped recording, and that eventually led to problems with compliance. They had sometimes little storage for the DVR, and that also caused them problems with compliance, since they were not able to store 90 days of video as they were required. They had little space for log recollection in the SCON server, and they had high CPU usage on the Syscom server. Another issue they had was that the Symantec endpoint security server stopped providing updates for the machines, and they didn't know about that. So impact to the project was poor service to the customer. They didn't have the ability to prevent infrastructure issues, and that led to poor compliance levels with security requirements. And the customer ended the business relationship with the company. So that was the biggest impact that this project had because of these issues. Some of the benefits that telemetry have for projects and for companies is alerting of possible issues on the infrastructure, making it easier to trace the root cause of problems. They help the prevention of issues, and they allow teams to be proactive. So telemetry is very important. Log collection is one of the steps of telemetry. But I think one of the things that it's even more important than log collection is the design of our metrics. We need to think about the needs of the company, the project, and design the metrics according to those needs. That will make telemetry successful or a failure If we design well our metrics, then we will have success. If we don't, we might fail anyway, even if we have telemetry software and means to track data. So what type of tools could have been used for this project? Well, since they had strong security requirements, data could not be stored or hosted outside of the dedicated infrastructure. So third-party tools that could be hosted on premise, that could help them collect logs and create these metrics would have been great. And in-house development approved by the client, and that would be another option. And they could have been built dashboards to show the different behaviors for the infrastructure and the different systems. And they could have created alerts and that alerted the IT team of possible issues or issues happening so they could stop them, fix them, so they could be proactive. So some of the useful metrics for this case of a study would have been network bandwidth usage, to prevent bandwidth to create connection problems for the end users, and eventually a bad image before the client. They could have created server CPU usage for the different servers, and they could have probably detected the problems with the SCOM server. They could have created the storage usage for the SCOM server and detect whenever the database was full. So they could have prevented the issue of not having logs being stored in the database because of lack of space. And they could have created some metrics and alerts on health checks on the DVR. So when the first hard disk failed out of the 4 that they had, they could have noticed that and replaced it, or even getting another system and another DVR and to connect the affected cameras to. They could have had a storage usage for the DVR, so they could have always been in compliance with the 90-day requirement they had for recordings. What could have changed with telemetry? Well, the IT team could have been aware of the potential problems on the servers with the low storage, like the SCOM server, and they could have also prevented the problem they have with the Symantec and not providing the latest updates for the antivirus. They could have prevent also the DVR from stop recording. They could have a automatic. They could have automatically spam the RAM on the SCOM server, or find a way to optimize the SCOM server for data collection. And they could have avoided audit findings that actually could have helped them to retain or have a good relationship with the client. They could have continued working with that client. In conclusion, telemetry, when applied correctly to our environments, can help us uncover issues that may be affecting our infrastructure, applications, and end users. And when we know what's going on in our environments, then we can act, not just react. Telemetry can make IT professional lives better, because we were spending a lot of time trying to find out the problems on the infrastructure, and we were not complying with our client. But telemetry could have helped on those issues, and resolving those issues faster, on preventing them, and making everybody's life easier. So this is a good example of how telemetry could have helped this project, and a good example of a case study. Thanks for watching. Bye.